You know those phrases, right? We're all human. Nobody's perfect.
Oh yeah, you hear them constantly.
Exactly. They feel like, well, just facts of life. But today, we're going to look at things a bit differently.
Uh-huh.
We're doing a deep dive into the May 22nd Rhapsody of Realities by Pastor Chris.
Ah.
And, well, this source really pushes back against those ideas.
It definitely offers a counter perspective.
So our goal here is to unpack that viewpoint, where it comes from, what it's arguing about, maybe our potential beyond those limits we often accept.
Yeah, it tackles those specific phrases head on. We are all human. Nobody is perfect. Even we all make mistakes.
Let's jump in then. What's the starting point?
Well, right off the bat, it sets up a pretty stark contrast. It actually quotes the Bible, Matthew 5.48.
Okay.
Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. That's the foundation.
Wow. Okay. So perfection is the starting point.
That's the argument, that in Christ Jesus, believers are actually called to perfection, victory, glory. And the source suggests that when we just, casually say, oh, we're only human, we might actually be sort of dodging that call, lowering the bar, maybe.
Right. Like settling for less than what's being offered.
Yeah.
So this idea of a call.
Yeah.
The source talks about a change, right? When someone becomes a believer.
A big one. Yeah, it brings in 2 Corinthians 5.1 scene.
Let me guess. New creature.
Exactly. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new.
So it's not just about trying harder. It's about being fundamentally different.
That's the core idea, a complete transformation, not just a minor upgrade. So the perspective shifts from being a flawed human trying their best
To being something else entirely.
pretty much. And it connects this to becoming, and this is another phrase from the source, partakers of the divine nature. That's from 2 Peter 1.4.
Partakers of the divine nature. Okay, that's significant.
It really is. It suggests our actual essence changes. We're not just human anymore in this view, but infused with God's nature.
Which makes saying we're all human sound maybe inaccurate from this perspective.
Kind of like missing the point of the transformation, yeah.
Okay, so that naturally leads to the next big one. Nobody's perfect. How does the source handle that, especially after quoting, be ye perfect?
It goes right back to that verse, Matthew 5.48, but then it unpacks the word perfect.
Ah, so it's about the definition.
And exactly. It's defined not just as flawless in the sense of never making a mistake, but as full-grown in maturity, blameless, unspotted, wanting nothing, like a completeness.
Okay, that's different. Maturity, completeness, not just, never messing up.
Right. It draws a distinction between, say, stumbling or making errors, which happens, and this state of spiritual maturity and wholeness that it claims is actually attainable for believers.
So when we say nobody's perfect, the source might argue we're maybe focusing on the wrong definition, or perhaps settling.
That seems to be the implication. That we might be limiting our own view of what's possible based on a common understanding rather than this scriptural definition of maturity.
Interesting. Okay, what about the third one? We all make mistakes. That feels almost undeniable in daily life.
It does, and the source acknowledges it's often used to, accept a life with errors, but then it counters with another verse, 1 John 3.9.
Okay, what does that one say?
It says, whosoever is born of God doth not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin because he is born of God.
Whoa. Okay. Cannot sin.
Yeah.
That sounds absolute. How does that square with, reality as most people experience it?
This is where the concept of the seed of God comes in. The source interprets this as the actual life and nature of God dwelling inside the believer.
Right, the divine nature idea again.
Exactly, and the argument is that this divine seed is what empowers the person to live righteously, to live above error. It's not about human willpower fighting against mistakes.
But about operating from this different inherent nature, a nature that's fundamentally opposed to sin.
That's the essence of it.
Yeah.
The power comes from that inner divine life, not just from trying harder on the outside.
So if this potential is there, this divine nature, why don't more people experience it, according to the source? Does it say?
It links it heavily to knowledge and understanding.
Knowledge.
Yeah, specifically knowledge and understanding of Christ and his gospel. The idea seems to be that really knowing and believing these truths is what unlocks the ability to live this way.
So it's about overcoming maybe old ways of thinking, like those phrases we started with.
Precisely. The source calls them negative beliefs and traditions. Knowledge of this new reality in Christ is presented as the way to break free from those limiting mindsets.
Replacing limitations with possibility.
Something like that. Replacing the I'm only human mindset with an understanding of being a new creature with God's nature.
Okay, so all these points, the transformation, the redefinition of perfection, the power over sin, the role of knowledge they seem to be building towards a certain kind of life.
Yes, the source describes it as the glorious life.
The glorious life. What does that entail?
It's portrayed as a life of excellence, righteousness, victory, even dominion.
Dominion over what?
Over sin, certainly, but also over Satan and circumstances, according to the text. It's a very empowered view of the believer's life.
Wow. So it's not just an internal state, but it affects how you interact with the world.
That's the idea. Because the life of Christ within the believer is seen as inherently perfect, the source argues it's then the believer's, well, responsibility almost, to live out that reality.
How? How do you do that?
The text encourages believers to actively refuse to accept mediocrity or failure, and instead to look to the word of the Bible and live according to it.
So consciously choosing to align your actions and thoughts with this inner divine reality.
That seems to be the practical application suggested. It implies that accepting those common sayings, I'm only human, nobody's perfect, is essentially settling for less than this glorious life that's supposedly available.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. The core argument from this Rhapsody of Realities piece is pretty radical, really.
It is.
It's saying that through faith in Christ, you're not just forgiven, you're fundamentally changed, transformed.
Yeah. A new creature, partaker of the divine nature.
Yeah. And because of that change, things like perfection defined as maturity and living without habitually sinning are actually possible. Not just ideals, but achievable realities.
Powered by that seed of God within and activated by knowledge and belief.
It really turns those common phrases we started with completely on their head. It challenges the whole idea of inherent human limitation for those within this specific faith context.
Definitely. It presents a very high view of the believer's potential and identity in Christ.
So for you listening, regardless of your own beliefs, it does raise a fascinating question, doesn't it? What if some limitations we accept about ourselves, maybe influenced by these common ideas, aren't quite as fixed as we assume?
Yeah, considering this perspective, even just hypothetically, how might your own understanding of your capabilities shift?
What new possibilities might open up in your thinking if you question some of those accepted boundaries about what's achievable for you?
It's definitely something to ponder.
And if you want to read this source for yourself, again, it's the May 22nd edition of Rhapsody of Realities by Pastor Chris. You can find more at their website, which is www.rhapsodyofrealities.org.
Worth exploring if this perspective intrigues you.
Absolutely. It offers a unique lens on human potential, seen through a very specific theological framework. And we'll see you guys next time
See you then.
for another deep dive.
Bye.
For more information on how you can grow spiritually using Rhapsody of Realities, please visit our website, www.rhapsodyofrealities.org, or you can also visit rin.rhapsodyofrealities.org/salvation. Thank you.